Hello, everyone, and welcome to another brand new, exciting, fancy, fun, and shiny episode of Back to Basics. I continue to be Pastor Don. I am joined by everybody's favorite Courtney, absolutely everybody in the entire world. There are no Courtneys above thee. And we are coming at you today with a brand new episode. And having continued from Genesis 20 last week, it may surprise you to know that we are going to be tackling Genesis 21 today. Hooray!
1-1. Sorry, I've been watching way too much children's television lately. My brain is basically fried.
Yeah, that I get. That I definitely get. So we are going to be on Genesis 21 today. And that is going to be talking about Isaac, Hagar, and Ishmael for a little bit. For today's episode, we're going to be doing 21 verses 1 through 21. Should be easy enough to remember. And we're going to dig into this a little bit. And speaking of Abraham screwing things up with his boy parts, well, guess where we are again today? Would you like to read our verse today, dear, or would you like me to do it?
Dear,
I know I'm being so adorable, aren't I?
just read the verse.
You'd be surprised how often I get that. Just read the verse. All right. Genesis 21, verse 1, starting from the birth of Isaac. The Lord dealt with Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah as he had promised. Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age, at the time of which God had spoken to him. Abraham gave the name Isaac to his son, whom Sarah bore him. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as God had commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. Now Sarah said, God has brought laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh with me. And she said, who would ever have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age. The child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. But Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, playing with her son Isaac. So she said to Abraham, cast out this slave woman with her son, for the son of the slave woman shall not inherit along with my son Isaac. The matter was very distressing to Abraham on account of his son. But God said to Abraham, do not be distressed because of the boy and because of your slave woman. Whatever Sarah says to you, do as she tells you. For it is through Isaac that offspring shall be named for you. As for the son of the slave woman, I will make a nation of him also, because he is your offspring. So Abraham rose early in the morning and took bread and a skin of water and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder, along with the child, and sent her away. And she departed and wandered about the wilderness of Beersheba. When the water in the skin was gone, she cast the child under one of the bushes. Then she went and sat down opposite him a good way off, about the distance of a bow shot, for she said, do not let me look on the death of the child. Now she sat opposite him, she lifted up her voice and wept. And God heard the voice of the boy, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, what troubles you, Hagar? Do not be afraid, for God has heard the voice of the boy where he is. Come, lift up the boy and hold him fast with your hand, for I will make a great nation of him. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. She went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. God was with the boy, and he grew up. He lived in the wilderness and became an expert with the bow. He lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother got a wife for him from the land of Egypt. Okay. So basically, it's an origin story. Before I dig into some of the interesting things that I find in here, my first question is the same as it always is. Do you have any questions? Anything that jumped out at you here?
Not immediately. I was just like, okay, this is interesting, and then it just sort of moves on. Yeah, no, I this time I'd like to hear what you have to say first.
Oh, that's always threatening. Okay. Well, let's start by looking at 21, 1 through 7, because this is kind of subdivided a little bit. Not enough for us to get 2 full episodes out of, but enough for us to move section by section.
Yeah.
The birth of Isaac itself was promised, but it was promised a little ways back. So he promised him a son, he got him a son, gives him a name, cuts his dick off. Well, part of it anyway. I did have to wait till you were drinking to do that one.
You ass.
So Abraham's 100 when this happens. And look, I'm 38 and I have kids, and that is already far too much for me. Like, later on we find that this whole thing was very distressing to Abraham, and I'm like, dude, I can imagine. And then, Sarah comes back to the whole laughing theme, because she laughed at the angels when they came. She's laughing again. How do you take Sarah's laughter here?
See, I feel like you're setting me up. Oh,
well, aren't I always?
I feel like the answer to that question is we should look and see what it might mean. Think of different things it might mean.
Yeah. You're not going to find it in the text, so I'm just literally asking what your feel on it is.
It seems genuine.
Mm-hmm.
Just like a joy and what a strange, wonderful life, sort of.
I get that, and there is a whole sermon in the motion from her rueful laughter earlier to her joyous laughter now. There's a whole sermon in that idea right there, which I will not preach today. There's also a part of me that wonders, like, she's round about 100, at least in her 90s, if we're taking the ages as literal and not figurative. She knows how children work, yeah. And I would imagine sitting in your mid-90s with a newborn baby in your arms, I imagine your laughter might be a bit more maniacal than joyful at that point. Like, oh God, what am I going to do?
Well, 90 by our measuring is very late into one's life, though. That wasn't the case for Sarah.
Yeah, and the question is, like, this is where we're kind of getting into angels on the head of a pin territory, because we don't really know if we're dealing with literal or figurative aging here, and we don't really know if we are dealing with literal aging. Like, yeah, sure, maybe it was 90 years, but like, what was their level of telmeric degradation? Like, how badly had their bodies actually collapsed at that point? Like 90 for them might be like 35 for us. We don't actually know. They may basically be Vulcans. I don't know. So there's a lot of I don't know. And that is, as I've always said, something we need to get comfortable with the Bible, is a lot of these questions are, I don't know. So yeah, like there's not a whole lot here in this first section, just enough to be like, oh, it's a cool little laughter motif. That's interesting about the age thing. She's very proud to have borne him a son, which I find interesting, by the way. Because out of all of the people involved in this story, there's really only one person who seems really just like obsessed with the specifics of the lineage of Abraham. And it's not Abraham, and it's not Hagar. It's not even necessarily God so much. It's really just Sarah, who's like, yes, you're going to have a kid. It will be my kid. It will be through me, and screw anyone who thinks differently. So that is, I can't say more than it's interesting to me, because I don't know that there's a lesson to be drawn from it. But it is interesting that, like, as we get into the next section here, Abraham's like, yeah, this whole thing's kind of distressing to me, but I'm not going to really like take a position on it, dude. So it's really just Sarah who's like really obsessed with the idea of patrilinealism.
Was that the way things were done at that point? Because I'm probably showing my ignorance here, but I was under the impression that in Judaism that was matrilineal was generally.
Well, I'm not going to be that Christian pastor ass who goes and starts talking about what Judaism definitely is or was.
Yeah, no.
The traditional,
it was just something that crossed my mind, and I'm not having a lot of ideas about this chapter for some reason.
I cannot say specifically. I haven't studied ancient Jewish culture specific enough to know for certain whether the culture of Abraham's period would authentically be patrilineal or matrilineal. I know that in that time period, as I've been taught at least, that women were generally considered property, particularly wives, on the level of like the head of the slave household and not equals. So the concept of a matrilineal society as we would understand it doesn't seem to match with that. But there may be a Jewish understanding to that I'm not getting.
Oh, okay.
So I reserve the right.
Or I could just have no idea what I'm talking about and be, hanging myself out here.
No, I would reserve the right to be wrong about that. My understanding, the traditional Christian understanding at least, is that this period was highly patrilineal. Because literally Abraham is the origin of patrilineal society here in our tradition. So like informed by his own traditions, comes from his own back. Yeah, I'm presuming that this was the water in which they swam as fishies. But I don't have concrete knowledge to that specifically. However, knowing what I know about like how wives functioned in that society and the fact that Abraham has sold her into slavery multiple times at this point, I'm guessing that matrilinealism isn't highly on the table. But, and this does raise an interesting point, if matrilinealism as a societal thing isn't heavily on the table, the fact that the story continues to focus on Sarah and Hagar and not so much on Abraham is telling.
I feel like there's some interesting stuff to deal with in like part 2 of this with Hagar and Ishmael being sent away.
And that's where we're going to spend most of our time here.
Yeah. I feel like there's definitely some stuff to address in here.
All right, like, what do your elf eyes see?
What's my what now?
I said, hey, Legolas, what do your elf eyes see? Lord of the Rings joke.
Yes. No, I'm sorry, I'm thinking. And you can like see the single mouse in a wheel up here right now. Like seeing their kids playing together being mentioned as specifically like what made her go, oh hell no. They have to leave.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing right there. Like,
and then God being like, just do it, it'll be fine. And then they wander around in the wilderness for a while. Like, that's an okay thing.
This is an interesting piece, by the way. Like, first off, Abraham, not to sound too much like an old Dutchman here, but I kind of get the whole rock and a hard place thing. Like, it's like, yeah, I want to be a decent guy, but the wife really wants me to kick this girl out. So, I kind of understand like the social dynamic he's arguing with there, but it's worth noting that Abraham responds to this social dynamic with all of the forethought and affection you would expect out of an absentee father who sells his wife into sexual slavery on the often. He's like, all right, well, we're in the middle of the desert and wife says you got to go. So here's a single skin of water and your baby, get lost. Like, oh boy, Abraham. Like, this is a theme we come to again and 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 again in the Bible is God gives command and people are like, okay, I'm going to do this in the stupidest way possible. Like, God says, you know what, it's fine. Sarah says send her away. Like, he's going to develop on his own, do his own thing. It's all right. Don't worry about it. And Abraham's like, sweet, I'm going to do this the way that's most likely to kill him anyway. Right. Abraham could have done, like, he literally
could have been like, all right, we're going to go to the nearest civilization. We're going to drop them off and or get close enough for them to easily make it and go part ways.
Screw that. He just got a whole bunch of crap from Abimelech in the last chapter, right? He could have been like, all right, so Hagar, you got to go. So I'm going to make you the mother of your own house until until Ishmael is old enough to do his thing. Here's a half a dozen slaves, 15 camels and 12 pounds of whatever. Here's some meat, here's some food, here's some resources. God knows I have enough. And if I run out over here, well, you know what? I'll just sell my wife again. He could have been fine. It was not necessary for him to just say, here, have a water bottle. It's Dasani. Good luck.
Horrifying.
Multiple levels. And like,
I wasn't ready for the canceling of Abraham to be something we were doing here.
I wasn't expecting it. So, well, I kind of was. I wasn't really expecting it to go this deep, but oh my God. Oh my literal God. And I think
this say it again, we're going to get in trouble. We're going to make people mad.
Yeah, but this is the thing. This is like a continuing theme with Abraham, at least, from a perspective of a modern eyes. His sin, other than like the sexual abuse of his wife, which again, I cannot help but restate, like his larger overarching sin is kind of a generalized apathy and disinterest.
You're right. God, I hadn't noticed before.
Like,
sometimes you gotta address the Bible as a narrative, and other times it doesn't help very much. It's almost like it's a very complex sort of living story that requires readdressing and thought.
At all here, I'm just imagining just a chorus of little children sitting in Sunday school class going, Father Abraham, don't give up. Anyway, that's what this is. Like, his primary theme is like, whatever. And the larger lesson to be taken from that is like, look at the kind of terrible stuff we can do while skating undeservedly into greatness when we think God's on our side.
There was no think about it. God was on their side, according to the story we've got on hand.
Yeah, you're not wrong. So anyway, is there anything else in here that you kind of caught into that we should kind of rip apart a little bit? I kind of tore through it a good deal, but this whole bit at the end with the kind of traumatic almost death of Hagar and Ishmael.
Yeah, it seems unnecessary, and then as you said, realistically, it wasn't in any way necessary, and it does not seem really what maybe God had intended.
I think it's here for dramatic effect, like understanding that this is meant to be a narrative story and not necessarily an accurate historical account of precisely what happened. Makes it easy enough for us to look at this and say, okay, well, it may not make sense, but it gives us an emotional impact here. And there is actually a really good lesson to be taken from it, even if in terms of an objective history, it doesn't really make total sense. Obviously Abraham did a phenomenal stupid by just casting him out with a little bit of water, because God, why?
Casting him out with a whole entourage because you can.
Yeah, you've taken from Egypt, you've got the leftovers from Sodom and Gomorrah, because you let's not forget he beat them up in the wilderness and took all their stuff too, before the asteroid came. And then he did the same thing to Abimelech that he did to Egypt. So he's built up a lot. He had the resources, he didn't do it. Just sends them out with the water and says, do your thing. And then we get this, the water and the skin's gone. She's like, this is the end of it. So I'm going to put the kid down here because I can't bear to watch. And then God takes care of it. And I think that is the important part here, because, hey, guess what? I told you there was yet another time coming up where we would deal with the racists look at the Bible and say, hey, this is what black people are. Yeah, Ishmaelites is another one. This is another one that people occasionally come to, racist people, and are like, oh, yeah, this is the origin of all of those non-white people. No, first off, just no, the splitting of two Jewish tribes in the desert, thousands of years ago is not going to be the origin of black people. That's not how any of that works. First off, we all came from there anyway. We know how evolution and trait management works. That's how that works. Anyway, before I get too far into science and how much racists really piss me off, it's really indicative to me here, because the racists that use this passage, just like they use Cain and Abel, just like they use every story of a division in the early tribes, is that, oh, this is the source of the people we hate. this was also used that way in different ways throughout antiquity. And people are like, okay, this is where X group of people we hate came from. They came from, Ishmael, who was cast out into the desert, and that's the one that Abraham didn't even want. So that's why they're so terrible. But it is extremely telling to me that Abraham and Sarah can say, "Get thee the hell out of here," but God is still entirely present with them.
Yeah.
Sounds like you've got a thing.
Just present with them, but only at the last moment when it's most dramatic, like
Narrative storytelling being what it is.
Well, yeah, but it creates a problem where, like, when you're mixing narrative storytelling elements with foundational, like, religious teachings,
Yeah,
I feel like there's times where it's gonna
this comes back to what I was saying.
muddy your message.
This comes back to what I was saying earlier, where I believe that God sets the destination, but God does not micromanage the journey. I think this was a case of God knew what the destination was to be. There was to be a nation raised up out of Ishmael. There was a nation to be raised up out of Isaac. Those were things that were going to happen. And if I had to stake a reason for why God waited till the last minute here, if I had to, and I don't, because it's a narrative storytelling and this is not specifically necessary, but if I had to stake a reason for it, it would be that God was basically just allowing every possible opportunity for humanity, by which I mean Abraham and his many, many horses and camels and shit, to deal with this in a way that would appropriately see God's will be done. I tend to view God's involvement in human history the same way that we deal with the "my child is a time traveler" paradox. Are you familiar with that one?
I don't think so.
The "my child is a time traveler" paradox also turned on its head in season 2 of Star Trek Discovery. Basically says, okay, I don't have any children, but I know for a fact that one of my children will be a time traveler. Therefore, if I try to shoot myself in the head, they will have to show up and stop me. And right up until the second you're pulling that trigger, nothing's going to happen. But you have to be stopped from doing it because that time traveling kid won't exist if you shoot yourself in the head. So the kid's going to time travel back and stop it. That's a given. And I tend to see these situations with like God popping in at the last minute as not dissimilar from that. God has ordained the end point of this journey for Abraham and Isaac and Hagar and Ishmael. God knows what this is going to turn into, but God is going to give every possible opportunity for that to be squared away right up until the end, where it's absolutely unequivocally clear humans aren't going to fix this problem and it's definitely about to go off the rails. And so that's where God steps in like the red angel flashing out of the sky in season 2 of Star Trek Discovery. Definitely still making that joke. But yeah, I think that's kind of what we're looking at here. And that's more or less how I tend to approach a lot of these questions of, well, why didn't God interfere until the last possible moment? Well, because it's our story, not God's story that way. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that totally makes sense.
Yeah. Because I view it as like God isn't looking at these from a linear narrative sense. Like we put them in narrative constraints for our own convenience. But God is looking at the entire thing like holding a marble from outside the bounds of time. Like past, present, future all look the same to God. So God's going to interfere right where that change is necessary, no more, no less. Anything else we wanted to tear into on this one, or should we call this an episode?
Yeah, it's gotten wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey, and viewers may notice there are a couple of cuts in this one because my toddler is having a rough night sleeping.
Interrupting toddler. All right, so why don't we go ahead and call this one for tonight then? Courtney, what would you like to ask the people to do for us?
Well, you can like.
That's an idea.
And share.
Okay, there's one other thing, isn't there?
Was it comment? Yeah, you can subscribe.
Oh, that's the one. That's the one.
Please comment as well.
Oh yeah, that also helps. Anything to serve the almighty algorithm would be very helpful. In the meantime, lots of stuff going on. This episode is still going to be coming out before Christmas. So if you're in Japan, we're going to be doing a big old Christmas Eve communion and fellowship service here at the church in Ashia. If you're Japan located, please come check that out. Details for that are and have been for a while now on the website. So please give it a look, give it a listen, and come visit us. I'm going to be making a whole bunch of bread and snacks and stuff for this. It's going to be a riot. There's going to be people. It's going to be fun. And from the looks of things, I know you can't tell by looking around me, but the church is actually going to be in pretty good shape as far as being cleaned up by then. So going to be nice.
Nice to see it in person.
Yeah. Got a Bible study going on. If you're up for the digital Bible study thing, we're hosting this with First Reformed Church. Again, details are on that website, what was down below in the description. That's Wednesday nights on the East Coast of America, Thursday mornings if you're a Japan Japan person like me. Other than that, I think that pretty well covers it. Like, we got more new stuff that's in the works, and we'll, hopefully you can join us for that. Of course, there's the Discord server, which is where our church is online. So, oh my God, join us there, please. We would like to have conversations. It's been a little dead there this week, so I'm kind of hoping that people will jump into the conversation a bit. Other than that, have a good week, y'all, and we will see you in the next episode.
Yep.
Take care.
Bye.